Hey, this is Khaliq Glover streaming to you live, and I just want to do this as an overview. This is kind of an invite. I'm doing a webinar that's coming up about how to get the perfect drum effects on using reverb, using delays, whatever. But I wanted to invite you to this webcast that we're doing right now. But in the meantime as well, I also wanted to provide you right now with something that you can use based on some of the things we're going to be going over. So one of the things I want to show you, this is like from the 7-step process, the 7-module course that we have in Effects Magic. We went through one in a previous webinar and previous training, and step one was to assess what the sound needs and everything. And for the different sounds, they may need different types of effects, but it's about studying and ascertaining which things need something, which ones don't. But also, we also had to, once we made the decision of what the sound needs and everything, then we need to find a category. And let me go over here for a second and do this real quick so that I stay on point. So even though we're doing that, what we're doing today is we're basically going to go on part 2 here. Step 2 is choosing the perfect type and category once we've assessed which ones need it. So, we're going to be specifically talking about drums today, and we're specifically going to be talking about reverb. So the perfect type and category. So once you decide on a category such as reverb, for example, as opposed to delay or modulation and pitch shifting and things like that, well, reverb has a bunch of subcategories, and reverb has subcategories such as like halls, plates, rooms, chambers, springs, nonlinear, early reflections, ambience, inverse, and just a bunch of different things that all fall into that category as subcategory of reverb, how it's broken down. So we need to be real clear on what's going on with that, okay? So what I wanted to do is talk about specifically drum reverb categories, all the different categories that I just mentioned and everything. Well, let's go through an overview of a few of them. We're going to go deeper on the actual webinar, but right now I thought this is something that you could use right now, so we're going to talk about that, okay? Now, Wikipedia has a good, nice little thing, but the biggest part of what was said in there, I just wanted to get to it, is remember this. It's about the persistence of sound after a sound is produced. That's very important for you to understand that concept and everything. And like I said, we'll dive deeper and on the actual webinar when I've got more time, but I wanted to just give you an overview. But that's an important point to think about. It's a landmark point and everything. Okay? So like, I want you to look at this. This is a concert hall, for example. Huge. You can see it's huge. So the persistence of sound is going to, like, any kind of sound, if somebody's singing, an instrument's playing or whatever, that sound has a persistence of sound long after the original sound is done, going around all that big thing. But there's different categories too. Now we've got something like, these are plate reverbs, the venerable EMT 140 plate. And it has a whole different type of way of extending the sound, the persistence of sound getting extended after the original is long gone. Okay, you've got other types of things like this is a studio, obviously, but it's a room. It's a large room. You've got all different sizes of rooms for different purposes, different types of coverings in them that make the room have different sounds. And this, for example, is a chamber, an echo chamber. It's all reflective surfaces with some speakers in the chamber and a microphone in there to pick it up. It's a whole different type of sound. Okay, and here's another one, something as simple as a good old stairwell, putting a microphone in it. I've recorded different things, drums. I've recorded guitar amps, put them something like that. And you can get some interesting sounds a lot of times and bake it right in if it's sounding good. So it's important to understand that, the category has subcategories. The category of reverb is not just you just think about it and then reverb is done. Okay, I put some reverb on, I'm done. You've got subcategories to break it down. So that's real important. So let's compare a few and talk specifically about drum effects and drum reverb. Okay, so let's go to Pro Tools for a second and let's see what we can do over here. Okay, let me go over here and I think I can do this real quick. I'm gonna take you over here. All right, so I've got a track here. This is a track by a group called The Brew, or Brew, whatever it is. I don't know if they have the on it, but I got it from the Cambridge website, where you can download a bunch of multi-tracks and use them for educational purposes and practice mixing and everything. So this is something that I felt is good if you want to go there and download it. It's something good. Right now I just have the track up, no kind of nothing on it, no real processing or whatever. I set up a couple of basic things here. So what I want you to see here that I have here is the good old venerable, this is the Reverb that comes with Pro Tools, and if you have Pro Tools, you probably have this and have toyed with it. What I'm going to do is play something, and I'm going to play the drums, and I'm going to send the snare through this good old Reverb. And let's check out the different categories of stuff. So let me play the song for a second, just a little bit so you can get an idea. And then we're going to run the drums through it. I muted out the vocals and all that. So there's nothing going on here. There's no processing, like I said, no EQ, no compression, no nothing. This is just a raw track brought in, and I just balanced it a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just listen to the drums. Okay, let me put on my headphones so I can hear this a little bit better. And then, okay, what we're going to do now is go through the categories of these different reverbs and everything. Let's see how they affect the drums. Now, I've got, right now it's dry. You hear the drums. You listen to the snare in particular. Now, what I'm going to do next, oops, make sure I don't, let me put this back behind my ear so it doesn't catch the microphone and mess with you guys. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to send the snare out here, but I'm going to send it through, I'm just going to pick the preset that comes up. Let's see what a hall sounds like. And I'm going to kind of overdo it so that you can hear what's going on. Let's go back. So let you hear it without, I'm going to put a hall through it now. That's a hall. I'm sending a fairly healthy amount there. I wouldn't normally do it, but I want you to hear the effect. Now, you hear it's long. This hall has 4.5 seconds of decay time. So one of the things that we're hearing now with that thing going on is it's really expanded. The persistence of sound is happening, but it's kind of persisting and smearing on to the next beats and stuff like that. Hear how long it is? Okay, let's try something else real quick and hear the difference. That's a hall. You can also hear some low end stuff going on because of the size of it. Now let's try a church. Hear that? That's a church. Now the church really has a long persistence of sound. It's bouncing off of the walls. It's darker sounding. Going back and comparing that to the hall. Hall, a little more appropriate, but it's still too much. Both of them are really kind of smearing out your beats and everything. So let's see how that sounds. Hall sounds better than the church, obviously, but it's still not quite right. It's too long. It's messing with it. We haven't even messed with the decay time. The decay time on the hall is 4.5. Like I said, the decay time on the church is 6.7. But let's go to a plate. Now that's a plate. Sounds a little better, huh? Listen to the characteristic, the tone of the reverb. And that's is at 1.6. That's a large plate in the presets. Now let me shrink that down to a medium plate for a second. That's a medium plate. It's 1.2. Not that much of a difference. And there's no pre-delay. Let's zoom in so we can see some of this too. Let's go down to a small plate. Okay, let's go back to the large plate for a second. Hear the difference? Let me crank this up even more. Okay, so what I want you to notice on that, and then we're going to go back and compare the plate with the Hall. I like the sound of the plate. It has the characteristic of it has a nice decay and everything. We'll talk further about some of these things, but I want you to listen to the difference between the decay of that compared to the decay of the Hall. And then what I'm going to do is compare some of the rooms and everything. And like I said, this is kind of an overview, a big bird's eye view of what's going on. On the webinar, you're going to get a whole lot more. So, you know, the webinar, that's the address if you want to do it. I'm going to continue on, but go there and register for the webinar. Anyway, let's try this again. And so see how different that sounds, the different sizes. We won't get into the frequencies and all that, but let's compare the plate and the Hall again. You hear it? Hear the difference in that? The decay is a lot more linear. Let's try to compare that to a room. The drums were recorded in a room, so a room might be perfect to just enhance what was already there. Depends on what you're going for. Okay. That's a room. Let's go back to the Hall. I mean the plate. Let's go back to the Hall. Let's go back to the room. Let's try a smaller room. This is a medium room here. That's a medium room. And this is a small room. Let's go to room 2 on here, which is a medium room. It's 750 milliseconds. Large room, small room. So very different types of sounds and tones. Notice the tones and textures are very different for what fits in there. Okay, let's try something else. We come back in. We got the room 2. Let's go with the room 1. That's a large room, medium room, small room. Plate, large plate. Let's go to a small plate. Okay, let's try ambient. You see that's let me bypass it for a second. You hear the difference without? Hear what's happening with that? Let's try non-linear. Yeah, that's decaying in a non-linear way, almost gating off at the end. Let's go back to the room. Different room. Let's try the plate. Let's try a small plate. Bypass it. Listen to what it's doing with all the tones in there. The tones and everything. This is where the tone of your source can be enhanced in a problematic way if you're not careful. Now, let's go to a small Hall. Let's bypass it. Here, listen to the tones and everything, that resonant tone of the snare. Let's see some of the other tones that are coming through. You gotta look at this plate. Okay, now I went through all that just to kind of show you, you know, just kind of show you and give you a comparison of how different the sounds can be and everything. And what I want you to do is remember what I said, that term that they had in it, the persistence of sound after the sound is produced. That's what's going on with the reverb there. And what makes you choose the right one, we'll get into it in deep in the webinar, so that you choose the perfect one that fits your track and everything. There's a lot of other things you need to listen to, but you get a basic thing there to hear that sounds can be very different. It can affect the tones very differently, how much you send into it, and you know, whether you EQ or not, different things like that. All these things we'll be talking about as we get deeper and deeper into the Effects Magic course. But the webinar is going to dig deep into quite a few of these things, and I think it'll be very helpful to you. So go ahead, if you get a chance, sign up for the free webinar, Choosing the Perfect Drum Reverb. Go to mixingmagic.com/effects-webinar. And if you're watching this video maybe later on in the future and it's no longer there, just register for the next one. I'll be cycling different things to that same page, so you'll always be able to find great information right there. mixingmagic.com/effects-webinar. Okay, hopefully that little bit was helpful. I've got something else coming for you that's going to dig deep. Oh, and before I go, let me do one last thing too. I want to show you, because on the next thing that we're going to be doing is now we've got something here where you know, we dealt with let me see, let me go back here and see if I can get this back up for you. Okay, so we dealt with the Reverb, but what, you know, say we got it on plate now. Say we like the plate and everything, we chose that. Okay, but now once we got the plates, what if that doesn't compare exactly right? Well, we got this other thing. This is the EMT 140 plate that I was telling you about before. This is the simulation of the famous EMT plates. This particular thing, that thing that was in the big brown boxes you saw. Well, this is the simulation of that. We've got 3 different plates here. One of these how do they sound compared to this plate up here by Avid for Pro Tools? You know, they're completely different. This EMT 140 plate has been on more music probably than any other type of effect. This one appears more on more hit records than anything. So next time we're going to go ahead and compare, see how the EMT compares to Avid's plate, and see what the difference is between those two. You know, we may even put in a couple other brands. It's very important to dig deep like this. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. I'm Khaliq Glover, also known as Khaliq-O-Vision, and I hope to see you on the webinar.